What's happening? It's John from Long Island Punk Band Wrecked. It's Wednesday, September 1st. Really not much news with the band except for tomorrow. Uh, East Berlin, down in the Lower East Side. We're playing our first city gig in over 2 years. So I think we go on around 8:30, 8:15, 8:30. So if you're in the area, if you're in Manhattan, come down, check us out. Um, East Berlin used to be a club, Brownies. Went there a few years ago. I forget why. I don't know if there's any band in particular there, but I remember going there a couple of years ago. So either way, um, yeah, come check us out and hopefully see some familiar faces out there. Purpose of this video is I got another addition to the vinyl collection. Something I've been looking at for a year or so. I figured I'd show you. All right, so this came out in Record Store Day of 2020, limited to 10,000 copies. This is a Grateful Dead box set, live at the Olympia Theatre in Paris, France, May 3rd, 1972, so a little bit before my time. I really don't know what else to say about the Dead, but first about the record. It came out Record Store Day last year. The places that I typically go to were all sold out, and then it went for hundreds on eBay afterwards. I'm not paying that kind of money, so I waited and waited, and I finally found one at a decent price that was relatively in good condition. I mean, it was sealed, but it was the box a little bit, banged a bit. But again, I as far as as much of a collector as I am, also I want the music. I want to play it, so the records are in pristine shape, so it's great. So now, getting back to the Dead, and I've said this in previous videos of how I got into the Dead. I wasn't a Dead fan because the only Dead music I had heard was probably Casey Jones and Truckin'. That's the only stuff they ever played on the radio. And in high school and junior high, the people that were into the Dead, the fans, Deadheads, I didn't like them either. I didn't go for the whole culture behind it, the drug use, the partying, the dreadlocks, the tie-dye, this, that. As a kid, I'm not just, it's not just me. I'm sure I'm not special, but then, as a kid, your identity is based on your music and your friends based on music and based on what you gravitate towards. And I gravitated towards metal, heavy metal, thrash metal, death metal, black metal, speed metal, anything extreme. So I hung out with those people. I hung out with the musicians that played that style of music. So I didn't really have any friends that were into the Dead, and there weren't that many Deadheads in my school anyways. Because by that time in the late '80s, early '90s, that the whole Dead thing had already been run its course pretty much, So anyways, I didn't get into the Dead until Jerry Garcia died, and I remember driving home from Nassau Community College. And the local rock station, WBAB, were playing a vigil for the Dead. And I didn't know that they were doing this, but I turned on my radio, my car, and I hear a song, which eventually I found out was "Ripple" by the Dead, and I couldn't believe it. It was a great song. It was a folky Americana, country-ish song. I was like, wow, this is a great song. I wonder who this is. And I said, oh, that's Ripple by the Grateful Dead off of American Beauty. I was like, huh? So again, at that time, I had no reference of the Grateful Dead except for Casey Jones and Truckin' and maybe Touch of Grey, which are all decent songs, but not even close to my favorites. So I was like, wow, holy shit, American Beauty. So I went out right after that and I bought American Beauty, and every song is great on American Beauty. And doing a little bit of reading on, this is before the internet, so I was reading in magazines and such, talk about the Dead, and then I told them, oh, Working Man's Dead's also another album that came out the same year as American Beauty. I bought that and I was thrilled with that, and that started the Grateful Dead for me. More of the songs than the jamming. But again, as you get down the rabbit hole of the Dead, they said, the best way to get into the Dead is their live show. Okay, I listened to Live Dead, and I thought it was abominable, horrible. But that was when they were still like a wannabe blues band, which they weren't any good at. So they said Europe 72, double album, double CD, great representation of the Dead. So I bought that. And not to be crazy and hippy-dippy about it, but it changed the course of my musical progression, my musical growth. my music, the way I thought about music. It changed everything because now this was a bunch of songs I'd never heard of that were beautiful. Jerry Garcia's guitar tone was beautiful. His playing was beautiful. His voice was beautiful. I couldn't believe it. And looking at Jerry, you think he's like a rough guy, and he had the most gentle voice, the most gentle guitar playing. I mean, it was just, it's not pentatonic. It's not repetitive blues scales. It's not shredding. It's like it's on its own. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And not necessarily hard to play his stuff. It's just you wouldn't think of playing the stuff he plays. And that's what makes Jerry Garcia. So this, getting back to this box set, this is based on one show in that Europe 72 tour. One show which has every killer that they ever played. I'm going to go through the songs. Side 1, Bertha, Me and My Uncle, Mr. Charlie, and Sugary. Side 2 is Black-Throated Wind, Chinatown Shuffle, China Cat Sunflower, I Know You Rider. Side 3, Beat It On Down the Line, He's Gone, Next Time You See Me. Side 4 is Playing in the Band, Tennessee Jed. Side 5, Good Lovin'. Side 6, Sing Me Back Home, Casey Jones, and Greatest Story Ever Told. Side 7's Ramble on Rose, Hurts Me Too, and Truckin'. Side 8's The Other One into Drums. Side 9, The Other One into Me and Bobby McGee. Back into the other one. Side 10's Wharf Rat, Jackstraw, and Sugar Magnolia. Side 11, Not Fade Away, Going Down the Road Feeling Bad, Back in the Not Fade Away, and ending the night with One More Saturday Night. So again, this is one show that they played, and if you do any reading on the Dead, it's purportedly their best show of the tour. And I don't know if it is or not, but it's a phenomenal record. The versions of my favorite songs on here are the best versions of these songs. Ramble on Rose, Sugary, He's Gone, Tennessee Jed, Greatest Story Ever Told, Sugar Magnolia, Bertha. I mean, every song is great. And what's crazy about this album and the Europe 72 album, there were songs on this that never appeared anywhere else. Didn't appear on any studio records, which was wild to me. Because I'm looking for the studio versions of Ramble on Rose. I'm looking for the studio versions of Tennessee Jed. I'm looking for the studio version of He's Gone, and they didn't exist. And I'm like, well, what the fuck? So this was in 72. So between American Beauty and 73's Wake of the Flood, they had a bunch of these songs that they never recorded. The rumor is they planned on it. They planned on an album called Rambling Rose, but it just never happened. And these songs would have been on it. But I mean, maybe that's what makes this record so special, is the fact that these songs were never recorded and put in stone on a tape and onto a record or onto a CD, onto a cassette, because they exist now in various forms over the various live albums. But for my money, this is where it's at. And if I recommend this to anybody who's looking to get into the Grateful Dead, start with this. It'll give you a great idea of what they were about. I'd never cared. The only stuff on here that I really don't like would probably be The Other One, Drums. The jamming stuff, the spacey shit. I never really cared for with the Dead. They weren't that great of a jam band like that. For me, I mean, a lot of people would tell me otherwise, but I mean, for me, the jam bands that were great were like the Allman Brothers Band. Those guys could do it, With the Dead, there's too much that got into, too much. Everyone was playing a different song. And another thing about this album, one other thing about this tour actually was they only had one drummer. So if you know the Dead, they had two drummers, Mickey Hart and Bill Kreutzmann. On this, Mickey Hart sat out for that tour, and Bill Kreutzmann was the only drummer. And that's what makes it the sound. More direct, more of a rock and roll sound, less of people, thinking that they're in a jazz band when they're not good enough to play jazz, and derailing these songs. But one drummer, great. Also the addition of Keith Gottschalk, Donna Gottschalk. Keith Gottschalk on the piano, Donna as a backup singer. And Donna was a session singer in her own right. Sang with I think Elvis. I think she did some background vocals on Elvis's records. Because Pigpen at the time, the keyboardist and the Dead, one of the founding members of the Dead, he was in bad. His health was in a bad decline, and he died like a year. I think he died in 73. But he was already checked out of the band anyways, because he wanted it to be a blues band, and they progressed past that because they weren't a good blues band. So he was sort of in like a hanger-on, in my opinion. Not to talk bad about Pigpen, but it is what it is. When they got Keith and Donna, it took them to another level. And this is a great testimony to what the Dead were about. You can find this all on YouTube, Spotify, anything 1972 with the Dead, you can't go wrong. 1971, 1972, 1978, 1980. You can really get into it with the Dead. Most Deadheads will tell you it's the Dead are like wine. Certain years are good, certain years aren't as good. And I haven't even scratched the surface, in my opinion, of the Dead, because again, I don't have many of my friends now or then or in general that are ever into the Dead that can talk about the Dead. Richie from the band, Richie, bass player Wrecked, he knows about the Dead. But every time we get together, where I practice, and we can go on for hours about the Dead. But instead, we try to rehearse and try to get something to where someone can listen to. But yeah, none of my friends are really into the Dead. But I'll sit there and I'll talk about them till the cows come home. I'll talk about the Dead. I'll talk about Lana Del Rey, Black Sabbath, and nobody wants to hear what I have to say about this shit. But again, for the Dead, 1972 is where it's at. I can't really say anything more about it. They should really, they should really be on the top echelon of inspirational bands. I mean, they get lost in the the mystique of the Dead and the culture of the Dead. But man, at that heart and at that core, the Dead were a great band that wrote great songs. And then when they were on, they were on. I mean, you could hear a lot of shit around this time too. Live shows that really were god awful. Maybe there was too much drugs, maybe the wrong drugs, maybe no drugs at all. Who knows? But anyway, this is a great example of the Dead when they were on fire, and they were on fire on this. Every song's good. Check it out. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say about the Dead. I mean, again, I can go on forever, but I can't do it. So yeah, check us out. Wrecked tomorrow night at East Berlin, down in the Lower East Side. It's on 169 Avenue A, something like that. Look it up if you feel like going. So we're gonna go on around 8:30. I'm very happy to come back to Manhattan to a gig, because it's been a couple of years now. So yeah, check us out. That's pretty much all I gotta say, and thank you for listening. Have a great night.